Thank you, Glenda. It is really an honor to be here today. A wonderful birthday party, and really looking forward to the activities. And
Pardon me, Andre.
by all means, Paxton, by all means. On behalf of all of the board members of Temple College, and I will introduce them in a minute, and Glenda Barron and her administrative staff and faculty, thank you for attending this birthday celebration. It really is an exciting time. I do want to recognize my fellow board members, and I will ask you to just stand briefly as I call your name. Katie Burrows, who is the vice chair. Katie, thank you. Bob Browder, who is our secretary. I know Bob's here. Harry Adams. Harry, thank you. John Bailey is here, I believe. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. John is busy. Steve Niemeyer was here as well. I believe he has left. Is that right, Glenda? But Steve is a current board member. Lydia Santabanez, I know she's here. Thank you, Lydia. Michelle DiGaetano. And Larry Wilkerson. I know Larry walked in as well. Thank you, Larry. So those are your board members. I also want to introduce our speakers. Yes, thank you. We're going to go on a journey. We're going to take a journey back into the past. This is a time capsule in a sense. We'll be going back in the past, and we're going to be hearing from some very influential people who have played an integral role in Temple College. And I'm going to just introduce them all right now, and then each one is going to come up and give a talk about a period of time during the Temple College history. Weldon G. Cannon is here and is going to be talking to us. He is a retired history faculty member, and his dissertation was actually on the history of Temple College. Ann Penny Newton, Dr. Newton, who has also been a board member, retired biology faculty department chair, and current member of the foundation board. Harry Macy. Dr. Macy is the former chair of Temple College Board of Trustees and the Temple College Foundation Board. And Dr. Mark Nigliazzo, president of Temple College from 1995 to 2008. And he's the current president of Texas A&M University, Central Texas. So our first speaker, when we go back into time, is Dr. Cannon. And he will begin with the story of Temple College from the 1920s through the 1940s.
I was reading a newspaper once. I do a lot of digging in newspapers. This happens to be a Temple newspaper dated January 23rd, 1886. A little behind in my reading, but anyway. The editor had heard a story that Baylor, the college trustees, university and college trustees, were getting ready to move their female division from Independence, a little town in Brenham County on a dirt road. They had already moved the male division, Baylor University, to Waco. But they wanted to move the female division, and by the way, Baylor Female College, we might call it, or as some people like to say, Baylor Female College for Women. They were looking for a place on the railroads for ease of communication and transportation. The Baylor trustees said, now all things being equal, we want to move to a place that will, of course, offer us the most money and the most land, of course. And Belton, a 35-year-old proud county seat town of Bell County, immediately jumped on this, as did many other towns in Texas. They got in the race early, and in about 2 months, they raised a pretty good sum of money. Now, 8 miles away was a new upstart town named Temple, 5 years old, a rowdy railroad town. It got into the act at the very last minute, and somebody said, you know, we'd really like to have that place too, that college. They had only 10 days to campaign. During this time, the newspaper editor for the Temple Times wrote eloquently and fervently of the necessity of attracting that college. And he said, you know, we just got to have it. It will attract hundreds of the best families in Texas to settle in Temple. The very name of such a school, he affirmed, backed and supported by so large and wealthy an organization as the great Baptist denomination of Texas, is sufficient to inspire every citizen with a flaming desire to see it located in our midst. It will attract the wealthy, the learned, the refined, the good, the great. They will dispense their wealth, learning, refinement, goodness, and the moral atmosphere will be balmy with their influence. What an incredible job a Baptist college can do to a place. Anyway, there it is. Well, Temple's effort was in vain. A few days later, Temple citizens picked up their newspaper and big, bold headlines. It said, "Lost!" exclamation point. Lost! 2 exclamation points. The battle for the location of Baylor Female College at Temple has been fought and the day lost. But as Temple lays down her shield in sadness, she has consolation which gives peace to the soul of every brave man in the fact that every man in Temple did his whole duty. And he commended then Belton for getting the college. At the same time, the Belton newspaper editor came up with this. He said, jubilation was sweeping through Belton at having secured the college. And he said, his comment was, while everybody is as proud can be of the prize that's in Belton, there is no disposition on the part of anyone to gloat over the defeat of Temple. You can just hear them not gloating between the lines, you know. Well, what had happened was when the Baylor trustees opened the secret bids, Belton had bid $31,000, and Temple had bid $30,000. They were sealed bids, and so no one knew. But just think, but for $1,000, we might be right here at the University of Mary Hardin Baylor, or we could be over here at the Belton Junior College. But it didn't work that way. Not satisfied with this, Temple, several years later, tried to attract a Lutheran college. That failed. Concordia went to Austin, I believe, wasn't it? And then they worked with the University of Texas. They were asking the University of Texas to establish sort of a satellite campus here that would offer 2 years, the first 2 years of university. That failed. Finally, in 1926, did you got that year? I don't know if you read the article in yesterday morning's newspaper, a Backroads column by Patricia Benoit. And somewhere down in that, there was this little statement. It made reference to the 9 centuries old college. I had a little chat with her about that. And we were talking this afternoon, Linda Barnes and somebody, about that, and said, look, it's in print. Said, what an astonishing marketing tool. The oldest junior college in the world, 9 centuries old. Anyway, in 1926, the Temple Public School System Superintendent L.C. Proctor suggested Temple establish a junior college. Proctor had been in Temple since 1914, teaching at the high school, and he was superintendent of public schools since 1921. There was a big movement to start junior colleges, as they were called, around the country. So Temple got on board with that. Temple businessmen, through their Chamber of Commerce, spearheaded this effort. The medical community got on board with it, just about everybody in town. The school board agreed to serve as the board of trustees for the college as well as the public schools. The college would use the high school facilities. Tuition would pay professor salaries. An experienced administrator was hired, and a very highly qualified faculty assembled. They were very good instructors. They would have been fine teaching undergraduate courses at the University of Texas. There was one little problem. When the college opened in 1926, enrollment did not come anywhere near expected. And that was going to pay the tuition. Their tuition would pay for the professors' salaries. Nevertheless, the college opened and the businessmen covered the shortfall. They said, well, let's try one more year, 1927. It ended the same way in dismal failure. The college was doomed until the public school stepped in. And Mr. Proctor, the school superintendent, said, okay, I'll serve as college president too. And the Temple School Board said, okay, we'll take this little fledgling college, incorporate it into the public school system. And that's what was done. The faculty was dismissed, all the staff, the high school teachers became college professors, and the college went on in Temple High School. Really, what we had here was a little more than 2 more grades of Temple High School, is basically what it was. But the courses were transferable to the University of Texas. The college limped along into the 1930s, the Great Depression, all these trappings of a college football team, publications, Latin, so forth. It was a classical school teaching literature and Latin and all of those things. That disappeared. Some courses were added to train people for jobs, and the college survived. World War II came. Men went off to war, students, administrators, teachers. New timely courses were instituted, like a course in flight training, World War II, courses in nursing. This was very important because with Camp Hood located so near and McCloskey Army Hospital here, we needed well-trained nurses. Plus Scott and White and King's Daughters Hospital had schools of nursing and needed trained nurses, and they were jammed in little old buildings scattered around the edges of downtown Temple. And the college did have some fair laboratory equipment and taught science classes. So there began this cooperative effort of the schools, educational institutions, and the medical community. And we know what that has blossomed into today, don't we? Marvelous beginning there. The war ended. Soldiers came pouring home. Some men discharged at Fort Hood stayed here. The GI Bill provided funding then for education. Many took advantage of it, even here in Temple, attending college. And with a building moratorium that we had during World War II, of course, no building had been done for the public schools. No new schools, no additions, and that building was jam-packed. The Temple population had boomed, the student population had boomed even more, and with all these GIs coming roaring in, the place was just in absolute chaos. Everybody was crammed into a little old high school building on one block in north downtown Temple, between 3rd and 1st and Downs and Elm. That's where this whole thing was going on. There were not even enough hours in the day, or in the night too, to schedule the classes that were required. Students, faculty, administrators just stumbled all over each other all day and half the night. High school and college faculty competed for space. It was chaos. Hardly a good environmental, educational environment. To restore order to this chaos, to clean up the mess, to lead the college on to its destiny, I give you Dr. Newton.
Weldon is a hard act to follow. And he's right about the chaos that existed. Things were so disoriented. We needed teachers, we needed everything. And it was a problem not only here, it was that way throughout the country. Everybody was struggling to get back from a wartime economy to a peacetime economy. And that was no small task. And so a few dreamers and planners who were there, and do I need to get... All right. Now can you hear me better? All right. Aging and allergies have taken a toll of my voice since I was once a teacher. And I'll try to stay in front of it so you can hear me. The chaos existed everywhere, and a few dreamers and planners whose classes were in the basement of the high school started the great exercise of separating from the public schools and getting a place of our own. And that was no small task. It was almost unbelievable how many things were needed to get started. But we went through the process with the help of citizens of Temple, to whom we are very grateful for all they've done for us through all of these years. Temple citizens gave us the building, and they have watched those buildings go up. They've seen the curriculum expand. They've seen all of the things that have come from this working together. And I still say our because it's still mine. And our school has become an example of everything that a community college can be and should be. We've had national recognition for which we're very grateful. And more people than we could possibly name or number have been involved in this, and you yourselves know that because you're part of it now. To talk about 3 decades in 10 minutes is impossible. But let's give it a try and talk about some of the people and the events. I'm very interested in those people because I was here for most of it, and many of them are still here, and it's like homecoming to be here today. I'm so excited over everybody I've seen. I've almost forgotten what I was going to talk about. But let's get down to some of the events. When I came to Temple in the summer of 1948, it was under really strange circumstances. I had graduated from Mary Hardin Baylor with a brand new degree in biology and chemistry, and I had taught at Port Arthur, Texas, in a little town between 2 refineries. I'd had a wonderful year, and I learned much more than the students did. It was a very good first-year teaching experience. The phone rang on the last day of my stay in Port Arthur. I was going to come home and be with my parents for the summer and then go back because I was just waiting for a young man whose hometown was in Temple to finish Baylor Law School, which never happened, and you'll understand why in just a minute. I came to Temple after Dr. Dawson said over the phone, "I am a desperate man." Makes you feel good. He had gotten my transcript, all my credentials, talked to 2 of my professors, and had, on the basis of that, called me and said, "I need a biology teacher Monday morning." This was Friday afternoon. I was packing, as I said, to go home. So when he said Temple, he got my attention because of that young man. And so I said, "I'll be there on Monday morning at 7:30. And he thanked me. I hung up the phone, and I realized I hadn't even asked him what the salary was going to be. And so that was my introduction to Temple Junior College. The first summer, we had nursing students from Scott and White School of Nursing. We did the academic courses, they did the training, and it was a good partnership. The other students I had were students who had come home to get an easy science course for their graduation requirements, and they were, I think, a little excited over what happened then. But we made it through the summer, and I'm going to digress just a minute because I had some GI Bill young men in that class, the general biology class that summer, wonderful students, and some of them you know, and I was just delighted to have them. But the thing I want to say about that, I think that the GI Bill was undoubtedly the greatest piece of educational legislation that has ever come out of Washington. It was wonderful. It began to clear up the chaos that we had been left with that Dr. Cannon has just described. The friendship that started with Dr. Dawson lasted until his death shortly after he retired in 1973. The separation of the college from the public schools became final 1955, I think, and we were an independent entity, and that was when we had the passage of a bond issue. And again, thank you to Temple voters who gave us the building we're in right now. And it was the first building that was built on campus. And that was exciting. The first time I came out here, I wasn't too excited. It was just a mass of mud and Johnson grass and derelict buildings. And those buildings were the remains of a prisoner of war camp that had been established here during World War II. And of course, McCloskey, just across the street, was taking care of hundreds of people who were brought home from the battlefield. It was a terrible time, but it got better and better as we got to the campus in our new building. We moved in the Christmas holidays of 57, and the spring semester after we moved in, we had more than double our enrollment, and we had very little in the way of equipment. I had 5 microscopes, an Army surplus pressure cooker to use for a microwave, and what else did I have? Oh, I had the Gober Medical Library on some shelves, and some of you know about Dr. Gober, on the shelves in my laboratory. Dr. Dawson felt sorry for me. He wasn't Dr. Dawson then, but I keep calling him that because that's what he was to me. He felt sorry for me because I didn't have anybody to help me with all the things that have to be done in a micro lab and in a biology lab. So the savior came in the form of Joe Grady Goolsby, one of our students. He was my student helper, lab assistant, who actually was also a brilliant student, but he was actually responsible for making the micro happen. It was quite a blessing. His daughter, by the way, but first let me tell you, Joe went to the University of Texas, finished there, came back to Temple, and was an outstanding director of the medical technology department at King's Daughters Hospital at the time he died. So I brought him up in the right way. His daughter, Joanna Scott, Dr. Joanna Scott, is a member of the English faculty here today. And there are others. I remember Anjanette Meske, who is in the Student Success Division, who was such a reliable lab assistant that in an emergency she could teach the labs. And that was really a big help. I could at least be sick every once in a while during those years when she was around. The buildings soon began to just, in rapid succession, appear on campus, and I won't give you a list of the whole ones, but I will mention two in particular. One was the library and the science building, which another bond election made possible, and we were so grateful for that. And that time of watching that building go up, knowing it was going to be my building, oh, that was just absolutely wonderful. So time went by and we moved into the new science building, and the library was named the Hubert M. Dawson Library, and a good friend of mine, Miss Roseanne Brazier, was the director from day one, and when we come to the college we tend to stay. She stayed until 1995 and retired, and is still interested in what's happening at the college today. The next building that came along, they came in rapid succession, and I'm going to refer to my notes so I can keep them straight in my mind. The next one, I think, was the Student Union Building. It opened in 1966, and it was named for two delightful ladies who moved with us from the high school, and I don't think the high school principal was all too pleased about that. But some of you remember Marion and Moselle Arnold, who were delightful people. Gracie Watson was chairman of the business department, and the building that is now Watson Tech was the Applied Arts and Sciences building, I think, at that time. Also, the building that some of you will remember well was when we named the Performing Arts Building for our beloved Mary Alice Marshall. And it just seemed that the buildings and the bond issues and the working together was absolutely endless and perfect. In, I think it was in the fall of '68, we got, yes, it was I think it was '68. We got the land across the street that became the East Campus, and there were some buildings that were pretty bad on that campus where the McCloskey medical people had lived during World War II. And of course now we have the athletic department and the allied health people and so many more on that side of the campus, but we did have to give up the golf course, which some of you remember. The 1970s were really special to me. I finally got my PhD from the University of Texas after having gotten my master's sometime earlier, I think in '58, from Baylor University. But I finally finished at UT, and that was really a big accomplishment. I felt like I had gone to school night and day for a lifetime before I finished that. I told my parents before I graduated from high school that I wanted to go to UT as pre-med. And my father looked at me very lovingly and said, "Over my dead body." That's no place for a 16-year-old girl. But I had changed my major, but I finally got there. The next thing that happened in the 70s to me personally was it was not a surprise, it was a complete shock. And that was when at fall convocation, the science building was named the Newton Science Building. And I choke up every time I think about it. But I thought I'd put in enough time that I had a vested interest in that building. I remember Abner McCall made a wonderful speech that day, and I don't know what I said. My husband said I thanked everybody very graciously, but I don't remember it. I just read in the paper the next day what I'd said. This has been a wonderful time. It's been a time that has been growing Temple and growing the college by people who were devoted to education and to the economic good of Temple. We appreciate all that's been done, and I thought when I graduate in '95 I was just going to be a citizen, but I was wrong. Dr. Harry Macy called me and he said, "I'd like to put your name up for the Board of Trustees, and we have a vacancy." And I said, "I don't know about that, but I'll let you know." And I finally called him back and said, "Yes, I will, I'll try it." Once. I was elected that year, and I was for a 6-year term. I was elected for 2 more elections of 6-year terms, and so I spent 18 years on the board. And those were wonderful years. The greatest thing that board did, in my estimation, was to persuade a young man by the name of Martin Igliazzo to come and be our president. And of course, that's not history, that's recent news, but not quite as recently as his latest accomplishments. It was great to be on the board when Mark was president. He had an administrative assistant, secretary, whatever, by the name of Louise Cox. And the two of them working together made planning and organization an art form. They were terrific, and we had a very good time. Presently, I haven't left yet. Presently, I'm on the foundation board, and I'm very grateful to the fact that the foundation was organized in the 90s. Richard Archer was the first director, followed by Rosemary Hauser, who did a wonderful job. And we now have Jennifer Graham, who is doing a great job. So it has made a real difference to our students. I had a card the other day that came to my desk, and it was from the Wildflower Center in Austin wanting me to give memberships to all of my friends and relatives for Christmas. And I didn't know about that, but I was taken by one sentence, or one little bit, that was on the card, and it said this, I would like to read you the quote from the card. It said, "Buildings bring us joy, but experiences change lives." All of us are proud of the facilities here, and we should be very proud of the lives that we've changed. I know lives have changed. I've watched it happen, and it's happening now. And it's been a part of me for 65 years, and we're glad it's here. Thank you.
That was a great journey, Dr. Newton, and appreciate that much. I want to thank Dr. Barron for asking me to speak with these educators, which I'm not, and I really appreciate that. And Andre, thank you so much for carrying on as chairman of the board. Also want to say thank you to Talma Botts. Back here on my left, it's most of the information that I got, other than what was on the screen, was from a dissertation that Talma wrote for her doctorate, and published it in 2001, I believe, Talma, if I'm not mistaken. And this brings back real memories, especially when I see the high school picture, because I enrolled in Temple College in the spring of 1951, and was one of those people in the basement, and one of those people that had the Arnold sisters, who were mentioned, and many others. And it brings back real memories, and those of you that are a little younger than I am don't remember the high school building, but the municipal court and the water building is there now where the high school stood, and fortunately the gym that the ball games were played in is still there. Over this 20-year period of time, 1980 to 2000, there's a lot of things I'm going to mention, but I'm going to start with what to me were the three most significant things that occurred during that 20-year period. And the first was a name change. And in 1977, the faculty board decided that it was time to work on changing a name, and Dr. Cannon happened to chair that committee. He doesn't remember that, but he did. Or maybe he does remember that. But the name was changed in July '96 from Temple Junior College to Temple College, I think primarily for two reasons. One, to get rid of the junior, which means it's an inferior college. When you say junior, that's not the senior part, and so I think getting rid of junior was important, and it also told the citizens of Temple and other people that we do more than just teach students, and it's so much more than that. The other significant thing that occurred was a change of presidents, and Dr. Felder had been here 22 years, and in July of 1995, the board selected Dr. Mark DiGliazzo as the third president of Temple College. Then it was Temple Junior College still. The third thing that I want to mention as to me during this 20-year period of time that was significant was in 1982-83, the Articles of Incorporation and IRS tax 501c3 status was given to Temple College Foundation. And to me, that is a marvelous thing and needs to be mentioned. Foundation scholarships this current year that we're in has given students, 192 students, a scholarship of over $132,000. It established a loan program several years ago, currently has over $100,000 in loans out to students, interest-free, and somewhere around 96 to 98% of those students have paid off their loans or in the process of paying off that. Bankers can take note of that because that's probably better than a lot of the loans, are they not, Mr. Doug? And these are interest-free loans, and the average is around $800 that the students borrow, but they borrow maybe $10 or $30 or $50, and it's for bread or for gas or if it's for something else that they need, and they're always paid back. Also, a food pantry was recently begun, and it's the nursing students pretty well supply the pantry with food, and this is started as a foundation project and is still being carried out by the foundation. The fourth program that they started just a couple of years ago was the bike sharing program. It's been in the paper, and I'm sure a lot of you know about that. And what a wonderful thing it is for a student to pick up a bicycle here and ride downtown to the library, or over to the VA, or over to Scott and White, or wherever they wish to ride. And in 2001, the foundation hired Rosemary Hauser, who's here, and she was the first full-time executive director for the foundation. She retired in December of 2009, and current foundation chair, executive director rather, is Jennifer Graham, and Jennifer's here somewhere. But that's the foundation, and that's my baby, and I'll get off that subject now and get on to what I'm supposed to talk about. So I've listed about 6 or 7 things that occurred in various years, which to me were important. And in 1980, the board decided that the faculty was not paid enough, and Weldon and Penny can relate to this, and average salary increase for the next year would be 13.5% for faculty members, and for administrators and tech people, it was in 10 to 14%. This sort of brought the salaries more in line with what other colleges were doing, because we had fallen way behind, and I think they can attest to that. In 1980, there was an energy crisis. Some of you may remember that. Gasoline shot up, and so on that year, the board decided that 4 days rather, a week was plenty to work. Number one, it kept students, which most of them were from out of town, having to drive on that day here and back, plus air conditioning and lighting, etc., for the college would save dollars. So we went to 4-day school week in 1980. And the third thing that was dropped in 1980 was the yearbook, the Templar, which had been published since the college began in 1926 rather, and it was discontinued and was not published after 1980, and that was primarily because of lack of interest, and they couldn't sell them, so they just stopped publishing it. In 1981, the nurse education building, you saw a picture a minute ago, was built over the old VA swimming pool, and it was a 20,000 square foot facility. The pool itself was used as a solar reservoir for heating and cooling. I don't know if it still is or not, but it was then. And it was dedicated in 1982, begun in 1981, finished in 1982, and is now the Del Martin Nursing Center after renovation and update. The other project in 81 was renovation or remodeling of the West Gym for tech programs, electronics, and TV and radio repair. 1982, discontinued the women's golf program. Problem was there was no 2-year college in Texas that had a girls' golf team. So there's nobody for them to play. So they decided just it'd be a good idea to drop that program. And in 1982, the surgical tech program was begun. And it's a 1-year program and has continued and is a fantastic program. In 1983, the mandatory assessment and student abilities program was begun. This was a testing program that tested all entering students, primarily because counselors were seeing students without an ACT score and had no idea what the student could do. And y'all may or may not remember that. And the legislature got wise to what we were doing. And in 1987, the TASP, or Texas Testing, Assessment, and Skills Program, was mandatory for all entering students in all universities. The mandatory assessment here was just for Temple College. 1985-86 year, because of decreased enrollment. And I might throw in here that when I started at Temple Junior College, there was about 330 students at that time. That's kind of like the 3-cent stamp. It's sort of gone up a little bit, you know. And now we're well over 3,200 students between this campus and the one in Taylor. Golf course in the summer of '86, the city of Temple took over Salmon's golf course and dropped the golf course here. And so it was outsourced as an auxiliary, or run as an auxiliary enterprise, and I hear the golf is no more. Police department's in there, they told me, so I think that's good use for the golf building. Also in '85, the first of the hostage situations on this campus occurred, and some of you may or may not remember that. Read in the paper that Ohio State had a slight problem yesterday. Small colleges, smaller towns are not immune to these things, and that was the first of 2 hostage situations, the other being in 1991. Both of them were with a gun involved, and in the 1985, 2 persons were actually shot, and the hostage taker was killed by himself. And that sort of started why we have a full-time campus police now, and all the other things that I read in the paper this morning about the locks, and I think that's fantastic. And these are the things that tended to start that. 1995, the dental hygiene program began, only one between San Antonio and Dallas. Enrolled 12 students. They took their classes at Temple Junior College, and then at night they had their lab at the VA clinic. And we've graduated from that and in a new building now. 1997, Taylor campus became a fruition. Temple College at Taylor, a foundation that raised money, bought the HEB building, renovated the building, and enrolled its first students in September of 1997. The building was dedicated in November 1997. The speaker was Laura Bush, the First Lady of Texas then. And November the 24th of 1997, the proclamation was made by the city of Taylor, signed by our own Larry Wilkerson, and that was Laura Bush Day in the city of Taylor. 1998, this is the last year because I don't go to 2000 with I'm over my 10 minutes too. 1998, classroom renovations in the instructional service building and expansion project of the HPE building occurred. Temple Junior College had a baseball team from 1969 to 1977. Because of credit crunch and dollar crunch and all the rest, the baseball program was discontinued. However, with the Civil Rights Act, Title IX, athletics, since the boys had basketball, girls needed something to counter with these, and so baseball was reinstituted in 1998. Coach McMurtry, I don't know if he's still here, first coach, and softball signed their first players that year, 1998, and volleyball was begun in 1999. So that's my comments, and Dr. Mark, it's all yours now.
I don't know quite where to go from here. 90 years, folks, 90 years. This institution has been here. And it's been through all sorts of shapes and forms. But the one consistent thing has been the quality of the faculty and staff and the quality of the students that have come through this institution. That has always been consistent. When I ran into a gentleman by the name of Larry Wilkerson at a conference, and he told me that Dr. Marvin Felder was about to retire, and he had a cohort who was also on the board at the time named B. Wallab. And they told me that they really thought I should be interested in this. After all, I was from Central Texas. Shouldn't be down on the Gulf Coast in Galveston. I should come back home. I told Larry, I said, you know, my toes are in the sand. And I'm pretty comfortable here. I didn't apply initially. And I ran into Dr. Felder at a conference. Dr. Felder said, Mark, we were really sort of hoping you would submit an application. And I said, well, Marvin, just not quite sure about it. And then I got a letter from Mr. Wilkerson. And Larry, I won't share all of your secrets. But it was a very persuasive letter, telling me again reasons why I should consider applying for the position. Well, the rest, as they say, is history. One of the first things I was told by a colleague at another institution when he found out I was coming here, he said, Mark, you're going to Temple College. I said, yes, sir. He said, well, that's a sleepy little college down there on the I-35. I said, a sleepy little college down there on the I-35. That time, Galveston College had about 2,700 students, which is large as it's ever been. It's actually not that big anymore. But we were growing. Temple College had about 2,200 students at that time. I was told 24. That was on the first day of registration. The 12th class day was a little bit smaller. But folks, all I had to do was look at this history, was to look at the history of this institution, where it had been, what it had done. And I had role models like Ann Penny and Dr. Macy and Dr. Cannon. Yes, even Mr. Wilkerson. I can pick on Larry because Larry gets me back on the golf course whenever he gets around to playing these days. And I thought, it's time for this institution to break out. Community colleges were growing. They were becoming the primary source of delivery of higher education across this country. They were called Democracy's College by some because they took everyone who wanted the opportunity, got the opportunity for higher education. They were called the Rainbow Connection by some because of the incredible diversity. And all I could think about and dream about was that that's what we had to become. And it was about taking a chance, taking risks, being able to do things that sometimes worked out and sometimes didn't. But we had to grow this college. When I left here, we were at just over 4,000. Glenda was here 2 years and it went to just over 6,000. Now it's settled back into the 5,000s. but a very solid settling back into those 5,000s. And I've got a long list here that I won't try to read of buildings, dedications, bond elections. I mean, I've only been gone from this place 8 years, and I almost don't know it anymore because of all that has been done, all that has been accomplished in the last 8 years by the board, by the president, by this incredible faculty and staff that has always been a part of this institution. And so I guess my few reflections are really on, in some cases, isolated things that are indicators of growth and development. When I came to Temple College, our computer system, our computer network was a coaxial cable that ran from the old IT building over here. That was it. And God help us if a storm came along and knocked it down, which it did on occasion. Now look around. All you have to do is look at that laboratory down the hall in the Student Success Building. And we went through all sorts of changes. Implementation of DataTel. There was a sign on the door when the DataTel student information system was being implemented. And everybody had to go through training. And there was a sign on the door that said, DataTel hell. But we did it. We got it done. And more than anything else, we began to reach out and embrace this community and surrounding communities. As most of you know, Temple College has a very small tax base, but a very sizable service area. And we began to reach out across that service area. I remember, John, my first trip to Taylor. I was going down there because I heard that Taylor was about to move into ACC's service area, Austin Community Colleges. So I was on a mission to go down there to keep that from happening. At the end of the night, we were talking about a center in Taylor. Not just teaching a couple of classes in the high school, which is what I was trying to get done. John had bigger ideas. And those ideas have morphed into what is now the East Williamson County Higher Education Center. And a project that went on for years, but is now potentially a model of educational delivery. And I am tickled to death to have come back as president of this new university with the primary goal of working with Central Texas College and Temple College and being able to make the 2+2 as seamless as we can make it. And go back again to what this place has always been about. Opportunity. Opportunity for students. It's had a number of distinguished graduates that have come from here. And there will be more. 90 years is not an ending. It's still progress. It's still moving forward. And I see since Coach McMurtry has left the premises, I can tell a story about Coach Mack. I was thinking about that starting that baseball program, Dr. Macy. You all know Coach McMurtry was a pitcher in the major leagues. And pitching is sacred to him. Earned run average of the Temple College baseball team first year was 11.9. Craig died 1,000 deaths. Game after game after game. But that, there he is. There he is. Now that he's here, I've got another story to tell about. If you watch the development of that program, of the softball team, of the volleyball team, of the continuing success of the basketball programs, and when we had golf and when we had tennis, it was all a part of the institution. It was all a part of growing and developing this place, telling the world who we are, establishing ourselves. We are significant. We do a major service for this region, and we can touch thousands of lives. Before I wander too far away from baseball, Craig would have won more games if he could have stayed in all of them. I have one little anecdote I have to tell you. I got to the ball game early in the first inning, and I looked around. Danny Scott was there, and I said, "Danny, where's Coach Mack?" He said, "Well, sir, he got kicked out of the game." I said, "Danny, the game hasn't started." Well, I don't know, what was it, Coach? Something about the way you didn't like the umpire was cleaning the plate off before the...
There have been so many, I can't.
Buildings have been tremendous. But I go back to what Ann Penny said just a few minutes ago. It's always been about the people. It's been about the students, and it's been about the people. I knew when I came here that we had to come together in order to make great accomplishments. And people had to own this place. They had to own it, and they had to own their piece of it so that it can move forward. And now I look back after I've come back, and I will tell you, one of the great hallmarks that Glenda has championed, and there have been many since she's been here as president, has been the Achieving the Dream program, because it's all about student success, the success of the students. This new building is all about student success. And we were reminiscing down there when we had 5 computers to try to work with students on. And now there are 50 plus in that room down the hall. This is a place, folks, to be proud of its heritage, its history, what it's been, what it will still become. I'm hoping before I leave A&M Central Texas that relationship will be even stronger between the two of us. We have our first baccalaureate degree on this campus being taught. Small steps, baby steps, but that's the way everything begins. You've got to have a willingness to start, and you've got to be willing to stay with it, to see how far you can take it. Sometimes it's very surprising how far it can go. I was looking through, and I'll conclude my comments with this. I was looking through some old files on my computer under the heading of Temple College. And one of the things that I was asked to do by a former director of the foundation board was to write the first letter to the alumni in a little publication that we were doing for Temple College. And I won't read it all to you, but I'd like to read 3 paragraphs. When an institution, and this was upon reaching 80 years. This was a part of the 80th year celebration. When an institution reaches its 80th year of existence, assumptions are inevitably made about its commitment to purpose, about its uncommon persistence, about its flexibility and resilience, about the ongoing quality of the services that it provides, about the talent and creativity of those who work within it, and about its value to those who first found it and continue to support it. All of those assumptions can be made with the most positive possible spin on them about Temple College. 80 years of growth and development can be chronicled from small classes in the basement of Old Temple High to world-class instructional delivery in the nationally recognized Health Sciences Center. Distinction has been achieved for programs ranging from the arts to the art of management, from an historical strength in general academics to the new frontiers of the Texas Bioscience Institute, from prowess on stage to prowess on the job, from championship teams, fields of dreams, to fulfilling the dreams of hundreds who might not have had an opportunity for a college education except for Temple College. Imagine the last 80 years. Imagine the last 90 years without Temple College. Imagine the impact that absence might have had on your own life or the life of someone you know. Ultimately, 80 years of existence is not about new buildings or championship trophies. It's about the lives that were touched and the lives that were changed. It's what TC has always done best. It is the essence of its value to the past and its promise for the future. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
Dr. Cannon, Dr. Newton, Dr. Macy, Dr. Nigliazzo, thank you for sharing your memories. Thank you for remembering our history. It has been an incredible 90 years for Temple College. What an incredible and wonderful legacy for this institution. I can only imagine what perhaps my grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be talking about 90 years from now. So thank you all for participating in this evening's event. We will continue to have some music and some refreshments. If you'll join us in the Arnold Student Union building, and I think we have some escorts out here which will get us there, we will continue the celebration at the Student Union Center. Thank you so much.